Hey all, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host, and today I've got another great guest who's been on before, Chef David Pietranczyk of Breville PolyScience. We're going to discuss some of the things that they have coming out or have just come out. I'll be right back with Dave Pietranczyk.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Hey, I want to take a second and talk about Inkbird's brand new instant read thermometer, the IHT1S. This thing has a lot of great high-end features at a very affordable price. It is 100% waterproof with an IP67 rating, 2 to 3 second ultra-fast response time, backlit, fully rechargeable, no batteries to replace. This thing has got all the high-end features that you would want in an instant read thermometer. Very durable. So check it out, guys. Check out the Inkbird IHT1S instant read thermometer. I think you're going to love it. It'll be your go-to instant read from now on. And now back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I am Darren. I am your host, of course. And today I've got another great guest. I've had him on before. Mr. Dave Pietranczyk. He is from PolyScience, Breville PolyScience, and he is on the, professional side of the Breville brand, where they deal strictly with commercial type products for restaurants, food service industry. And we're going to talk a little bit about the new products they have coming out and some of the things that they are working on or have worked on here recently. David, welcome back.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you so much for having me. So I guess to dive into a little bit for people who haven't seen our first interaction. Well, it wasn't the first time we met each other. I think we met at the Sous Vide Summit 2 years ago, and then shortly thereafter was on one of your podcasts. What did we discuss on the first podcast? I don't even recall.
Just pretty much what PolyScience did and all that. I think it was before these new products came out. So just tell them who you are, where you live, and your little history about you, and then who PolyScience is.
Right on. So yep, I'm Dave. I'm the chef of PolyScience. Functionally, I work in marketing and NPD products. I have my hands in a lot of different things at PolyScience. Before my time here, I cooked for about 10 years around the city of Chicago. That's where I'm from. I've cooked in some great restaurants. So a lot of them they were great back then, but now there's Michelin Guide, and those restaurants have earned Michelin stars. So that's pretty cool. And Bib Gourmands and all of that stuff. So I worked at some highly accoladed restaurants. And I did that for, like I said, for about 10 years. And then I decided it just wasn't a lifestyle that I was, fit for. And then I decided to, I took a quick break, and I started working for Sur La Table, a home cooking store, if someone's not familiar with it, a home appliance and, culinary stores that sell plates and all that stuff. Certain locations have classes, and I taught classes there. I didn't work in retail. I was a chef instructor there. Not anything like a culinary school or anything like that, but I did teach culinary classes there while I was trying to figure out what my next move was. And one day there was it was sort of dumb luck. I was a big fan of PolyScience, and I was this sous vide nerd. And this is 10 years ago, something like that. I was a huge sous vide nerd and a big fan of what PolyScience was doing. And there was this post on Facebook that said, "Hey, we're looking for people to join the culinary team." That's all it said. Sure, let's sign me up. Let's do it. So I sent in my resume. I heard nothing. And then like 6 months later, I got a call completely out of the blue that did I want to go in for an interview? And yeah, I did. So that's been history. I've been with PolyScience now for 8-9 years, and it's been super awesome. My role has evolved dramatically over my time here. I started out just answering culinary questions on the phone, placing orders, doing invoicing, all of this stuff that was not anything like what I thought it would be. And then I started to move in a more creative role, doing photography, some video work, writing recipes and stuff like that for our book Immersed. And then that stuff kind of snowballed. In 2014, Breville acquired PolyScience Culinary, from Preston Preston Industries, which was PolyScience Industrial and PolyScience Culinary. And they actually had a small photography business at the time, or a magazine called Photo Techniques. Nobody really knows that. So they bought the culinary piece. So since 2014, I've been a Breville employee. And since here, I've worked much the same in that advisory capacity with customers of all sorts of backgrounds. I work in new product development, so I'm on the forefront of figuring out what's next for us, and then also supporting our current line of products. And I also work in marketing, so any of photography or videography, printed literature, digital assets, any of that stuff that we need, I either do it myself or find someone else to work with to do it. And I do a lot of this. I do a lot of trainings, do a lot of in-person engagements and stuff like that, which is where I met you at Sous Vide Summit. And yeah, so that's me. That's what I do.
You said that like an all-in-one breath. So I like ran out of breath. Just had to catch my breath just listening to it. So
I've done that many times. Let me tell you, that's just all. It's just stuck in the back of my head, and I read it with the back.
That's your elevator speech, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you do? Hey, boom, wow, I work for PolyScience, blah, blah, blah. So I don't think a lot of people understand that PolyScience is one of the first innovators of the sous vide circulator, and that they started out, I mean, their biggest business was lab equipment and stuff like that, industrial equipment. It wasn't culinary at all. And
that's right.
Why don't you kind of explain just a little bit briefly how that kind of worked out?
Yeah. So in 1963, we made the first, actually it was our first immersion circulator. I can't claim that it's the first immersion circulator, but we made our first immersion circulator, which was called the Polytemp Model 53, I think it was. And we've made all sorts of other analytical equipment like Geiger counters and oscilloscopes. One of the things that we were most famous for is that we made the thermal cycling unit that tested OJ's glove. That was a PolyScience product. Very, very big into chillers. So PolyScience, on the cooking side, people know us a lot for cooking, heating, like immersion circulators. You heat with them. There is a whole world of refrigerated immersion circulators for analytical use, and also chillers. So a chiller is like a gigantic box that has a tremendous cooling capacity in it. And they're used to cool everything from like lasers to mammogram machines, industrial machining equipment, CNC machines. So PolyScience's main market is chilling. And we've done some fun stuff with like Heinz ketchup was a fun project. Like you probably never noticed, but your Heinz ketchup is the same texture when it's extremely cold or not extremely cold, but when it's at 40 degrees in your fridge, up until if you have it out at room temperature, it flows at the same rate. And that's by design. And that was tested with a viscometer that is temperature controlled by a PolyScience immersion circulator. Anheuser-Busch was doing some accelerated aging studies, thermal cycling studies on their beer. So when they brew a beer, they put it in bottles, it's in their temperature controlled warehouse. Then it goes on a truck, goes across the country or wherever to distribution facilities, then probably another truck, then to your local liquor store. Then it might sit in your car and then finally be at your refrigerator, right? So what they did was we created a temperature bath. We called it the beer bath. And we filled it with all of these, we made it so that it would fit all of these beer bottles. And then we ran these temperature cycles because that beer did not taste the same after all that temperature cycling as it did when they produced it. So to get the taste, that signature taste of their beer, they altered the recipe based on this data to produce a new flavor for their beer.
I don't think a lot of people understand how much science goes into a lot of the products that we buy, whether it's, food products.
Everything.
I mean, one of the things too, I think people, if they've ever watched the, Chopped or the Food Channel, the Food Network, the anti-griddle is a PolyScience product too, that
Yep.
they kind of invented, where you just, if you want to cool something, really quick on that anti-griddle, which is instead of a hot, flat griddle, it's extremely cold and it chills stuff like instantly. So,
yeah. The anti-griddle was one of the products that kind of put us on the map as like a really innovative thinker. So in 2005, we were the first people to supply chefs with submersion circulators. We know that. We were the first person. And we know that because the guy who was looking for it called all of our competitors and they told him no. And they told him, like, you're crazy. We use this for like DNA sampling and all this other stuff. And you want to cook fish with it? You're out of your mind. So that was so we were famous initially for sous vide, but then as we started to expand to things like the anti-griddle, that's kind of what gave us this like sort of heritage or this kind of, persona of like, hey, these guys are bringing innovative things. So the anti-griddle was a product developed with Chef Grant Eckes of Alinea Restaurant here in Chicago. He had this idea that he wanted to freeze things or create something that was both frozen and liquid at the same time. And how do you do that? So at that time, PolyScience was kind of almost a little bit of a hobby of PolyScience, of Preston Industries. PolyScience Culinary was a little thing. And so Philip, he made he made two anti-griddles, one for Grant and one for himself, thinking it would never become anything. And then, chefs talk, like Wiley Dufresne and at WD-50 finds out he's got one of these things and he wants one. And then John George wants one. And then, it just kind of, chefs talk and it snowballs. So the anti-griddle is now one of our best-selling products, 10 years later. And it's a pretty cool piece of equipment. Pun intended.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems to me that all the stuff that, it's designed for the restaurants. It's not, because a lot of the stuff that you guys make is higher quality, higher end. It costs, money because it's a higher quality, higher made product. It's not something that it's going to come out of China. They're going to make 500,000 of them and, have a margin of like, 10% and be able to just, put them on a boat and ship them over here and make a ton of money. Everything that you guys make is built to last. It's built to take a beating. The sous vide circulators have always been on the higher end because they're made for to take a lot of abuse and for exact precision. They're not made just to be cheap. They're made to last a long time, to work when they're supposed to work, to be at the exact temperature. Correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's another part of kind of what put us on the map is that all of our products, I mean, they last with if you take care of them, they last forever. I still see our circulators from 2005. They still pop up every once in a while and people have them. They might be just kind of hanging on. The sticker on the front is kind of falling off. I seen one guy, he had a rubber band around his because he said that it started to like shake. So he had a rubber band around it to hold the knob in place. So people love those things and they last forever. So that put us on the map. All of the stuff is machined to did I lose you?
Nope. I'm going
you're pulling up the website.
Pulling up the website so people can actually go to PolyScience Culinary and they can see the stuff that you guys have. And some of the things we're going to talk about here is the new Hydro Pros that you guys came out, the new design of the circulators, which is really exciting to me because they've incorporated a lot of the newer technologies and some of the stuff that I know that some of the competitors have been working on as well. But just if you guys go to PolyScienceCulinary.com, you'll be able to see what we're talking about. Another thing that you guys came out with was the smoking gun. That was one of the first companies to create that. Now, there are a lot of those on the market now that are cheaperly made, but this here is a, professional, high quality smoke gun. So,
yep. So we created the original smoking gun. I think we might have a patent on that somewhere. But Philip was actually at a Tiger Direct. And if someone doesn't know what that is, Tiger Direct used to be a store where you could go and buy pretty much it was a store like you would walk a retail store. They had brick and mortars and you could go in there and pretty much find anything you needed that was like a control board or a keyboard or mouses or the laser for the mouse. You could find anything from a Tiger Direct. And he was looking for a vacuum for his keyboard. And he was working on a project. He had like smoking food sort of in his mind. He wanted to do something with that. And he saw this vacuum cleaner And he was in the store and he said, well, instead of sucking the air in, why don't I just push the air out? And then he ran over to a local cigarette shop, bought a bowl with a screen, kind of wrestled it together with this vacuum cleaner piece. And once he figured out that he could blow smoke, that was it. So it kind of just happened, sort of like, kind of like a spark. And we were the first people to create it. This is the new generation right here. This is the Smoking Gun Pro. So our first foray into the smoking gun was awesome. But this one's a lot better, a lot more usability, cleanability. Super happy with those.
And the Control Freak is, if people don't know what an induction cooker is, or induction plate, this is the induction plate on steroids, correct?
Yeah. So the Control Freak doesn't have any, induction in general doesn't have any heating. It uses induction technology, so based on magnetism, to create heat from the cookware that's set on top of it. And because of induction benefits, they're very, the word I'm looking for, efficient in their operation. And you can also get very precise with them. So this one, what we did here was stick a temperature probe straight through the glass that touches the cookware directly. And we monitored temperature something like 60 times a second. And we are able to provide 1 degree of control in a pan, which is something that has never been done before.
Now I have a very cheap induction that I use in my videos and stuff. And I mean, it goes from 350 to like 420. There's no, I can't like fine tune it like this here, but it only cost me like, $60 or $70 too.
Yep.
Same technology, but this has got a lot more built into it. This is for those, again, it's aimed at restaurants or, food service where they need to cook at precise temperatures. And this is something other than sous vide. You could actually put your pot and have your water on there and actually cook sous vide in that pot using the Control Freak, correct?
Yeah, actually, so this was originally designed for use for use in restaurants. Recently, it was approved for household use as well, and we're actually selling probably a rivaling amount of this product to avid home cooks as well. They're doing really, really well in the prosumer market as well, believe it or not. And it's $14.99, not inexpensive, but home, because of COVID, so many people are not able to go to restaurants. More people are cooking at home. People have budgets because that going out budget just isn't there. A lot of people are buying this right now for home use as well. And it's just the experience of cooking on it. It's not just about the precision. It's about the experience of cooking on it. It's so stress-free. Darren, we'll get you one, and then you can, base your own opinion on it. But
okay,
we'll get one out to you, so you can give it a test drive. But I'm telling you, it's really the experience of cooking on it, because you can heat a pan to a temperature, walk away for it literally forever, and you would come back and it would be the same exact temperature. That's not something you can do on the stove or any other cooktop. And it just kind of frees you up. Like if I'm sweating something and I don't know, my cat, throws up or something, I can walk away and come back and it's totally fine. Like it's just a much more different, it's just a very different cooking experience.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really, attracted me to sous vide cooking initially was precise temperature, because I don't think people really understand, if you can cook something to precise temperature, for the whole time you're cooking it, it's so hard to do. You can't really do it on a regular oven or a stove, like you said, because they're just not made for that. They would cost so much money to buy an oven or a stove to get precise temperatures that it just doesn't make sense. So it's to get something that you can, yeah.
The benefit of the Control Freak. So as an example, would you notice something that was seared at 400 degrees, 401 degrees, 402 degrees? Absolutely not. But I can tell you that let's say toasting spices or sesame seeds or something in there, because I make tahini pretty often. Toasting your sesame seeds at like 230 degrees, and I can just let them ride, and they're not going to burn. Pine nuts scorch. If you turn your back for a second, pine nuts burn. You can just throw them in the pan. They're totally fine. There's just things that it frees you up to do, and there's applications that people will do sous vide that aren't necessarily best suited, I think, for sous vide, like hollandaise. I'm a chef by trade. I like to make hollandaise in a pan with a whisk. That's just how I like to do it. I think to have the bag, a vacuum sealer, and a whipping siphon just to do that, yeah, it's great. Sous vide hollandaise is awesome. But I can go to the Control Freak, set it for 73C, whip up a hollandaise, and it just holds in a pot. I mean, it's so much easier to do it that way. Making stock. You could cook stock sous vide. I drop a probe in it, set it to 205, let it ride. My pressure cooker. I pressure cook a ton of stuff. Put the pressure cooker on there, set it to 223 degrees. Never over pressurizes, never under pressurized. Boom, it's done. It's very different cooking experience.
Yeah, definitely. So I just want to touch on one or two more things here. Like we talked about the anti-griddle, just so people know what we're talking about here. And like I said, I saw it for the first time on Chopped, I think, because they had one on that show, and I saw people use it. I'm going, what the heck is that thing? Yep. And then I found out, years later, that it's PolyScience, and that's what it does. And that thing is just a pretty cool little thing. It would be a nice thing to have at home, I guess, right? No, I don't think so. My kid would stick her hand on it and freeze it off. So I want to talk about
Go ahead.
I just want to talk about the MX2 infuser next too.
Sure.
So this is you guys just came out with this not too long ago as well, right? And this is a vacuum sealer on steroids, pretty much a chamber sealer that does a lot more than just seal and vacuum seal stuff, correct?
Yeah. So the MX infuser is in a vacuum infusion chamber, I like to call it. So yes, you can seal bags in it and all of that, just like you would a chamber vacuum sealer. It does all of that. It's more than capable. But it's the thing that's really awesome about it is its vacuum infusion techniques. Its ability to compress solids, infuse liquids, make super quick brines, things like that. That's really where it shines. It's got a bunch of presets in it for packaging, sous vide, marination, infusion. You can create your own presets in there, and it's kind of just one-touch operation. And it's super accurate. It's accurate to a single millibar. You get a really cheap vacuum sealer and it'll run on it runs for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it is, but you actually don't know how much vacuum you're pulling. And to get a consistent result, you need to be able to have some degree of precision, some benchmark. So you can program this within a single millibar if you're that into it, or you can just go with all of the presets that are in there and you're going to get a perfect result.
And again, it's not, this is not a cheap product. This is not something that's built for the mass market. This is something that is a specialty product. And it costs money because it's built to last. It's built right, and it's
these last forever. These things last forever. So they have a Bush. I think it's DVP. I forget if it's Bush or DVP, but they have actually, if you look under tech specs there, it'll tell you if it's Bush or DVP, but either one.
Yeah, DVP.
Yeah, DVP makes some of the best vacuum pumps that are on the market. They're really, that's really what you want. Those are what's quality. And so it has an oil pump system in it. What's cool about the oil in this thing, actually, it takes only 2 ounces of oil, 2 fluid ounces. That's like nothing. And it ships with oil in it. And it has an automatic oil sensing and cleaning system. So it'll tell you when your oil is dirty, and then it will make you clean it. And then at the end of it, it'll tell you about the life of your oil, how clean it is, when you need to fill it. It'll also prompt you to run a cleaning cycle where it pulses and holds vacuum and releases it to get moisture out of the system. So it has, that is the number one reason that vacuum sealers die. People do not change the oil. People do not maintain their pumps. And this kind of does it all for you. So in that regard, super awesome.
Yeah. And like you were saying, a lot of times they die because the oil gets water in it, because the water in the chamber, whatever water can get into the oil, and then it messes up all the gears and stuff in the pump. So,
or if you have a dry piston pump, so ones that go brrr, like run on a vibrating pump, those don't have oil in them to flush out the contaminants. So what happens over time when you're pulling a vacuum, you don't see it, but there is small amounts of evaporation that are happening, and then that moisture will recondense inside that pump. Water and metal don't mix. Eventually, they rust out and they seize up. So that's why you would want to use an oil pump system. You also have better control. You get a better vacuum on them, and then you can maintain them. So an oil system is what you want. This is $2,000. It's really a unique price point because for the features that it has, to get something similar to this, even kind of similar to this in the commercial market, you're looking at like probably 3,000 to 35,000, 3,500 and up. On the consumer side, you can get 1 million vacuum sealers at $1,000. This sits in the middle where it's the form factor of a home vacuum sealer with the depth of a commercial vacuum sealer, the feature set of a commercial vacuum sealer, and then a price point that's like right in between. So we're super, super excited about that.
Yeah, and even some of the commercial ones that are in that price range don't have a lot of the features that has built into it. So
yeah, our this has more advanced features. So we have what we call the 400 series, which is a super capable vacuum sealer focused on HACCP. And that one at $3,200 doesn't have the same infusion and brining and compression techniques built into it that this one does, or as deep of a chamber.
Yeah, so there's some great stuff that PolyScience makes, and if you're really into gadgets and gear and things that are going to last you a long time, highly recommend you checking some of them out. There's some other things that they make, and I don't want to take the whole episode here going into all of that, because I want to get into the new sous vide circulators, the immersion circulators that you guys came out with. Hey, all, I want to introduce you to a company I just started working with, Fresh Jack's Organic Spices out of Jacksonville, Florida. They're a small family-run company that's fast growing. I've tried a bunch of their different seasoning blends and spices, and I can tell you they're all fresh, all organic. None of them contain artificial flavors or sweeteners. None of them have anti-caking agents or preservatives. They all taste like they were just made for you yesterday. Check them out, guys. They're on Amazon in the link below. They have different sample packs, different blends. Like I said, they also have the individual seasonings and spices as well. Fresh Jack's Organic Spices. Check them out, guys. I love them because they're a lot different than the ones you used to have, and they've got a lot more technology built into them, and they're cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did this call come about? You made something with more features, pretty much, actually a better size. It actually will fit in most of your pots. So most consumers now can take this and put it in their standard stock pot, like you got right there. It's got, an LCD screen, and it's got a bunch of stuff in it that the other ones don't have, but it's actually cheaper. So tell me how this all came about.
Yeah. So we've been working on the Hydro Pro series for a very long time. These were many years in development, and we took a lot of advantage of available technologies. Right now, you can get touchscreens that are super cheap. It's almost as cheap as buying, just an LCD. And so this has a full color TFT touchscreen, and I can plug it in and kind of go through it. It tends not to look so well on camera just because of the exposure, but we can walk through it if you like. But so this is a full color TFT display. Again, because of cell phone technologies, there you go. Cell phones, tablets, wearables. This technology is come down to a price point that's just really affordable. The motor technology in this. So actually here, if you take a look at this, I'll give away my party trick here. If you switch back to the live view. So you'll see here, the foot, this just unclips, and this, and the whole impeller system pulls out, and inside there's nothing. It's just magic. So this is inductively coupled to a motor on a brushless DC motor on the other side of it, on the other side of that wall. And this is actually, we borrowed this from drone technology. drones, brushless DC motors have super crazy capabilities, inexpensive now, and they last forever. So we borrowed that from drones. We borrowed the screen from, just the availability of displays. What else is in here? I'm trying to think of like what else.
Well, it's all steel, pretty much steel. It's not plastic, and you got the plastic for where your LCD screen is, but everything else is pretty much steel. And that's a really great feature right there, because it's always been a pain in the butt to keep your circulators clean, because even though you could be using distilled water in your container and they'll still get gummed up and things get in there, and you got to run the vinegar and all that in there. At least I do at least once a month, or they get gummed up, because I use mine a lot. So
we actually have in this unit. So those are the technologies that we borrowed. There's so much technology that we crammed into this thing that's just insane. So on that point, we implemented a descaling feature. So it'll actually, in the screen, it'll walk you through how to set up a descaling bath, recommend an acidity per volume, and then it will run a range of temperatures to clean the circulator out, and it'll run at different flow speeds. So it will clean itself.
So what else does this have built into it? Let's talk about the sous vide toolbox a little bit.
All right, so let's go through. We'll just go through all of it. So sous vide toolbox is a guided cooking experience that's built in. Sous vide toolbox used to be an app for iOS and not Android, and that was something for a long time we wanted to change. And knowing that this was coming, we built it into the circulator. So sous vide toolbox, you basically tell us what it is you're cooking, and then some things about its thermal conductivity, its shape, is it fresh or frozen, how thick it is. Do you want to pasteurize it? Do you want to pasteurize to a core level or a surface level? So we walk you through all of this depending on what the food type is. Is it a tender cut or a tough cut? And then you simply just press what's on screen. And then at the end, it'll say, hey, this is how long it's going to take to cook. We offer you an ice bath calculation. It'll say, hey, if you're going to chill this later, flip this switch, and then we'll tell you how long it takes to appropriately chill this food. And it also has what we call fast cooking. So we'll talk about this a little bit more, but this is that delta cooking technique where we're cooking at a temperature above our desired finish temperature, and we'll save anywhere from 30 to 50% of cook time by doing that. So you can enable that. And the sous vide toolbox has been expanded. So back in the app days, it was really just about animal proteins, pork, beef, lamb, poultry. Now the sous vide toolbox also has lentils, legumes, set custards, fluid custards, root veg, green veg. I don't know if I mentioned fruit. There's one other thing there's an octopus setting now, shellfish. It's been way expanded to include a whole bunch of new food types. So this sous vide toolbox is in both the Hydro Pro and the Hydro Pro Plus.
Now, neither one of these are Wi-Fi or Bluetooth based. Everything is inside the unit, correct?
No. So neither one are Wi-Fi. Neither one have Wi-Fi. The Hydro Pro Plus has Bluetooth out to the Asset Manager app, and then Wi-Fi out to however you want to manage those logs and data. Wi-Fi out from there. Wi-Fi is, I don't know. I've always scratched my head about it. I know people have like different feelings about it, and for circulators, like everybody puts Wi-Fi in there. And I think they just do it to check the box. Like, hey, does your circulator have Wi-Fi? Yeah, it does. Okay, what do you use it for? So I could check the temperature. You don't need to check the temperature. Like, I don't understand. Or like, I don't know. We like to put technologies in where there's a benefit. We added a descaling feature because that solved the problem. Wi-Fi, you still have to go up to the circulator and put the food in. You can't just leave food floating all day. So why can't you just turn the circulator on when you go to set it up? And if the answer is, well, it's up to temperature already, this thing heats up in super fast. You're saving 5 minutes, maybe. That feature, Wi-Fi, I don't know. In the case of Joule, it makes total sense because there's no interface on it, right? So it having Wi-Fi to the phone absolutely makes sense. You need that to input the temperatures. But here, all of that's built in. Sous vide toolbox is built in. I don't know, just Wi-Fi wasn't something we were hungry for.
Well, yeah, if you have it built into the system, it doesn't make sense because the biggest thing with the apps, as far as I can see, is that they have the built-in recipes and so like with Jewel, that's it's got even the little
The recipe
pictures of
draw.
what it's going to look at, and and it gives you the ranges. So it's on your phone. They don't have to build it into the unit. It's cheaper for them, I think, to build it into an app. They can change it and update it all the time without having to worry about firmware updates and stuff like that. So
I think the opposite. I think it's more expensive to do it that way. What you get out of that is expedience to market. And I'm not knocking Jewel. Jewel's part of Breville. I mean, I love those guys. I love they make a great product too. But what you get out of things like that is an ability to change things later. And we make hardware, right? To change this is difficult. With the software, you can just make changes up on the fly. The backside of that is you have to be managing that app and a lot, and that's a lot of development work and a lot of time. So there's trade-offs. There's reasons to do it, and there's reasons not to do it. And also for us, from a health and safety standpoint, when we talk about commercial kitchens, this is one of the dirtiest things in your kitchen. So having people interact with this as part of the cooking experience is something we didn't want to do. So just from that perspective as well, that was just another reason where we were like, we're not going to go that route.
So the Hydro Pro and the Hydro Pro Plus, what's the main difference between the Hydro Pro Plus that it offers than the Hydro Pro?
Okay, so Hydro Pro Plus and Hydro Pro, both have sous vide toolbox, both have manual cooking with up to 3 timers and adjustable flow speed, and then the My Presets feature. You can set, I don't even know how many there are. It's a lot, like tens of presets. There's a lot. I haven't reached the limit yet because it's a data file. So there's not an exact number of slots. It's a percentage of memory. So many presets.
So let's stop there and talk about that too, because I don't think we touched on that, where people can actually, if they like their pork tenderloin at 138 for 4 hours, they can have that. They can program that into the system and just name it pork tenderloin. And when they want to do a pork tenderloin, pull up pork tenderloin and hit press go, and it does that. Correct?
Yep. So there's 2 ways to approach it. You could go in through sous vide toolbox and go into pork cylinder, and then put in your specific temperature of 138 point whatever, or you could set it up as a preset where it says pork tenderloin, this amount of time, this temperature, a flow speed, and then if you have the Hydro Pro Plus, a probe alarm for the probe. So with the Plus model, that's where you start to get into in manual cooking. You can cook with the probe to alert you or when your core temperature has been reached, both cooking and chilling. It has data logging features for HACCP compliance, or some people call it HACCP, and then the ability to connect to the PolyScience Bluetooth HACCP manager. And with the Hydro Pro Plus, if any of you guys have seen the exploring, I'm going to plug Jason on your show, which I'm sure
that's fine.
Is on our last Exploring Sous Vide show, we talked and we'll probably talk about it here too. Is with the probe you can cook at very much higher deltas and shave off way more cook time if you have that probe capability. So if you were going to buy a data meter and a probe separately, you're looking at hundreds of dollars easily, like hundreds, at least $100 for $50 to $100 for a decent probe, and then $200 plus for a really good data logging meter. With the Hydro Pro Plus, all of that's built in for $100 extra bucks. Like there's no choice.
And then you got the Bluetooth capable to, if you're in a restaurant and you need that. I don't think a lot of my people are home cooks and they don't know what HACCP is. So just explain what HACCP is and why it's important to be able to monitor the internal temperatures.
Yep. So HACCP is Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. So basically, in a restaurant, we're serving people food. Their lives are in our hands. It's a very serious thing. Like, people think you just go out to eat and things kind of happen magically. It's a pretty serious deal, and people can get sick, especially when you're cooking at low temperatures and vacuum packaging foods. There's other considerations that need to be in place or taken into account to make the food safe. So the health department will ask you to fill out a HACCP plan to ensure that you're adhering to safe cooking procedures, and they will go through your plan and approve you or deny you based on what you submit. So the idea with the Hydro Pro Plus is, hey, we're going to make this stupid simple for somebody to adhere to these guidelines and provide a safe product for their customers. So we created the PolyScience HACCP Manager app. The whole data logging process, you talked about the temperatures. For HACCP, you need to log storage temperatures, receiving temperatures, cooking temperatures, holding temperatures, cooling temperatures, so much temperature data. And we said, well, at least within the Hydro Pro, we can handle cooking and cooling. So we do that, and we spit it out to a log that has all of this information about the restaurant, who cooked it, where it was done, what temperatures the product was put under from cooking to cooling. And all of this is in a report that a chef would normally have to fill out by hand, all of these lines. It does it all automatically.
Now, how often do they have to do that? Just like once a quarter, once a month, or it's not
every
like
every single day for every food product that's cooked sous vide. It's a ton of work. And for a long time, that's like people, Darren, I'm telling you, what restaurants that I worked in, back in the day, the health department would come in. We'd throw all of our vacuum bags in the freezer. We would take the circulator, hide it in the office. We would take I've heard people taking the cooks, I've seen them carrying the vacuum machine out the back of the restaurant and putting it in someone's car. Because they would shut you down. They will shut you down. There was a story of a particular restaurant in Chicago. I won't name it, but if you do enough Googling, you'll probably find it. A particular restaurant, the health inspector came in and made them put all their vacuum bags in, cut open all the vacuum bags, put the food in a garbage, and dump bleach over it so that they could not serve it. I mean, it's just insane, the level of misunderstanding within certain authorities. So we're trying to do everything we can to make HACCP this not scary thing and make it super easy and accessible for everyone. So yeah, anytime, let's say if you cook salmon on your menu, and that was one of your ROP, reduced oxygen packaging products, or a product that was in your HACCP variants, every batch of salmon that you have to have, one has to be probed. The salmon has to be logged the temperature when it comes from the fish supplier into your back door, who received it, when they received it, what temperature it was. Then it goes into this cooler. This cooler is at this temperature. It was put in that cooler by this person at this time on this date. Throughout the time that it was in the cooler, it was at this temperature for this long. I prepared the food during the preparation. Like, all of this has to be logged just so you can put sous vide salmon on your menu.
So the Hydro Pro Plus has the probe that you can actually stick in your sous vide bag while it's cooking, so you can monitor the temperature the whole time. So let's go into that a little bit, because I want to talk about some other things you can do when you do have that food probed that you couldn't do any other way. So, because that's what's coming out next. And I think a lot of people don't understand why they would need a probe, or why a probe would be necessary, and what you can actually do if you actually know what the exact temperature of the meat internally is. Because I think a lot of people don't understand that just because the water is at 140, and eventually the food's going to get there, but you don't know when, and you don't know how long. And it's a lot of guesswork unless you actually have a probe in there.
Yes, it's all guesswork unless you have a probe in there. If you cook a pork chop this week that you got from, Bob's Meats, and then you cook a pork chop the next week, and you cook them both for an hour, I guarantee you that you arrived at two different temperatures. The very slight differences in thickness of the food product make big changes in the cook time needed to reach that product. And the only way that you know that you've hit it is to monitor it directly. Sous Vide Toolbox does an excellent job of calculating it. We worked with Douglas Baldwin, who's one of the foremost minds on thermal conductivity. He actually earned his doctorate and wrote a lot of his math based on sous vide cooking. And Sous Vide Toolbox is a very good calculator of that. But the only way and the health inspectors will look at it as good data. The only thing that they will accept is a true probe rating. But you were talking about delta cooking and the things you could do that you couldn't do without a probe. So I'll show you those. So let's get her turned on. All right.
Well, also I've actually got a cheaper, a meat stick, which is a wireless probe that you can actually cook in your barbecue, your smoker. But this one is waterproof, so I can actually stick it in something. And I've played around with it to just see. I cooked a prime rib, I cooked the thicker steak, just to see how long it takes to get to where to what it equalizes. And it's really opens up your eyes, because it'll take a lot longer, and those last couple degrees take a lot longer than you would think. It'll go up pretty quick, and then it starts to slow down, and then those last 2 or 3 degrees to finish it off, it takes a lot longer than most people would understand, I think. So
the last 2 degrees are like I said, 30 to 50% of your cook time, depending on what it is and the thermal conductivity of that protein. 2 degrees could take a very long time. And when I say 30 to 50%, that's of your total cook time. If you've got something that's, going to take 4 hours just to reach core, again, half of that is just that last 2 degrees. So it takes a tremendous amount of time. So cooking that's why Sous Vide Toolbox has that fast cook feature. Cooking 2 degrees over where you want to finish, you'll reach that temperature much, much faster to shave off that time. But let's talk about doing it with the probes, and you brought it up.
Well, another thing that comes into play too is when you're cooking a tough piece of meat and you want to use the time to tenderize it. So you want to make sure when you hit that your equalized temperature of you're cooking it to, like, say, 135 or whatever, you want to make sure when you hit the 135, because anytime when you hit the 135 is when you start to tenderize. So once it hits the 135, it's going to stay there, but then it's going to start tenderizing, so that all right, it took me 3 hours to hit 135. Anything up and over that, it's going to tenderize it. The more it stays in after that, the more it's going to tenderize.
Yes. So what the probe will actually allow you to do is enter a target alarm for the probe. It'll say, "Hey, I've hit core," and then you can set a holding time assigned to the timer that will go off at a time past that. So whether it's you're just holding it to pasteurize it for X amount of time, or you're holding it for 3 days to cook some short ribs, it will time that out as well. So about the probe, a little bit about this particular probe, because I think this is, I think it's cool. It's one of the things that makes me happy, the over engineering that we tend to do. So the traditional methodology is that you would have a data meter and a probe, and probes have an inherent inaccuracy. So they have a range in which they operate. Any temperature probe that's out there has a range. You can't just measure the hottest temperature of the sun. You can't measure the Arctic ice temperatures. Thermometers operate within a range. Cooking thermometers operate in a smaller range because we need them to be accurate from a little below freezing to about boiling to baking temperatures, and that's about it. Your oven doesn't go hotter than 500. So 0 to 500. Sorry, let's say let's just say 0 to 500. Speaking in Fahrenheit, that's a small range. Some meters go from thousands of degrees to negative 1,000 degrees.
Wait a minute. You just quoted something in Fahrenheit.
Yes.
I'm going to tell Jason.
You guys are influencing me. You're a bad influence on me. So probes have an inherent inaccuracy within their range. So they might be +1, +2, -1, 0.1 within a given range. And then what you would do is you would offset it, you quote unquote calibrate it, which is not a true calibration. You would offset it based on, let's say, something like ice point, and you would adjust it. But when you do that, these probes, they don't know anything. It's just a probe. The data meter is what you're offsetting based on that reading. When we developed this, our engineers said, well, what if you take another probe and put it in there? The offset's going to be wrong. We were like, yeah, but that's kind of what people do. And they were like, this just makes no sense. Why would you ever do that? Like they couldn't fathom how this would be a commonly accepted practice, right? Because it's so flawed. It's so flawed. So what we've done is we actually put a microchip on the end of all of our probes. That's what's in this little egg-shaped piece here at the end. So each probe remembers its own offset and remembers its own calibration data for HACCP compliance. So you can use any of these probes with any of our circulators. So, all right, we'll go ahead and plug this in. It beeps to tell you that it's in there. So we're going to go into manual cooking. And I know this is, we're also at the mercy of audio. So I'm going to try to be as descriptive as possible in my explanation here. So when you go into manual cooking, it's going to ask you to set up a cooking temperature, right? And this is just like you would do any sort of setting up a temperature with any circulator. Let's say we're going to do, let's just say we're going to do a ribeye steak. I'm going to set my bath to 55 degrees Celsius. See, there you go. And then it's going to ask me, how do you want to cook? Do you want to cook using a timer or a probe alarm? And since we want to do a Delta cook, we're going to use the probe alarm. So I select that. And now it's reading the probe. Up at the top, it shows me my set point, my current temperature, just like a normal circulator. And then on the bottom, it has my current probe temperature. Now I can click it to add an alarm. And I'm cooking my steak, let's say, in a water temperature of 55, and I'm going to cook it to a core of 52. So now it beeps at me, tells me okay, and I see the alarm on the screen and it tells me what my current temperature is. Now I can just put my temperature probe in the steak, drop it in, and it'll alarm me when I've hit that desired temperature of 52. And in that bath, that's 55. And like we talked about earlier, that's going to occur much, much faster than if I would have just set my bath at 52 to get a 52 degree steak.
So that's called Delta T cooking. And I think you were probably the first one I heard say that. And maybe AJ Scheller from CREA, I heard her say that at one time, maybe last year or something at the Sous Vide Summit. It's been kicked around. And that's one of the things that when you use a probe, you can actually do, like you said, instead of setting your temperature on your sous vide bath, let's say 131 or whatever, you want a medium rare 131, you can actually set it up to like 133 or 134. And then when your internal temperature of your meat gets within a couple degrees, you can kick it back down so that it actually cooks a lot faster initially, but then, you're not really going to overshoot it, because you're not cooking at a super high temperature.
Yeah.
So you're not cooking it on a grill or in an oven at 350 degrees, and you're trying to get to 131. It's a lot harder to catch, jump off the train. Meathead used this analogy once. It's trying to jump off the train at the station when it's going 100 miles an hour. It's a lot easier if it's going 2 miles an hour. You can jump off and be fine and be right at the station. Correct?
I love Meathead, and I'm going to steal that because that's a great explanation. But yes, you are absolutely correct. Now, there are things that you can do. So let's talk about the different types of Delta cooking methods there are, or the different types of sous vide cooking methods there are, because I would say that things fall into three different categories of three different temperature approaches, let's say. So the OG of sous vide cooking, the original method and the method that most people practice is I'm going to set my water bath to the temperature that I want this food to be cooked at. And that's great. You're going to get an exact result. And you can hold the product for pasteurization. But I could do things like pre-searing it to pre-sear the exterior of the product and then bypass holding it for pasteurization. So additional considerations for holding time or pasteurization via another method, you need to have that in place if you're going to choose to do that cooking method. The next method would be like a 2C delta, where we're cooking just above where we want to finish. And then, I can jump off the train when I need to, or I can slow the train down and say I could turn my bath down. I could remove the product from the water bath, or I could just begin chilling it. So that's another thing that you can do. Then you can cook at extremely high deltas, where then you rely on carryover cooking to finish the product. So let's say I'm cooking a piece of, what did I cook on Jason's show? I think I did a pork chop, and I cooked it in a bath at 83 degrees Celsius to a core of 52 degrees Celsius, and let it carry over to 62 degrees Celsius and call that done. So I cooked at a very high temperature, brought it up very quickly, and then pulled it out so that it slowed down and arrived at the core temperature that I wanted. The benefit of doing this is thus: I pasteurize the exterior of the product as part of the sous vide cooking process. Whereas again, in that low temperature approach, I would have to do it some other way, or just hold it for, a long amount of time. And I want to cook as long as I have to, but as short as I possibly can. So I pasteurize the surface with that method. And I also create textural contrast. Sous vide salmon, in my opinion, is not awesome. It's like a stick of butter. It's very unitextural, right? It's just soft, and that's fine. The first time that you've had it, you're like, oh my God, the salmon is amazing, because you've never had salmon like that before. Everybody's used to eating, overcooked salmon in a lot of cases, because it's really easy to overcook salmon. So having sous vide salmon, you're like, wow, this texture is amazing. But then using this high temperature approach, I can create a textural contrast, which makes the eating experience much more interesting on your palate, create a textural contrast from the exterior to the core, pasteurize the surface so that it's safe, and cook it way faster. So there's huge benefit to doing it that way as opposed to doing it the way you've been doing it. And you can only do that if you're using the Pro, because that's when when you start seeing the signs, hey, it's 10 degrees below my core, I'm going to take it out and rest it to carry over. And you can't and then knowing when it's actually hit that core, can't do that unless you have a probe.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of benefits to that. And that's what I want people to understand, because it's still kind of new to a lot of people, and they look at it and go, hey, I've been cooking like this, without a probe just fine. Why would I need it? Well, there's a lot more things you can do when you add something like this. When you add more technology or things that you can control, there's definitely more things you can do.
Yeah, you can make better food. You can make better food. You can deliver a better product and a safer product. I actually have depending on when this post or when people listen to this, I'll have out this week a blog post. So if you're listening to this sometime in the future, check out the blog at PolyScienceCulinary.com. I have a post coming this week all about Delta cooking, actually, and everything that we've just talked about. And I've actually, so the pork that I cooked on the Exploring Sous Vide show, I cut into all of it. And then took a very detailed photograph of the interior of all of those pieces of pork. And I won't spoil it so that everybody can go through the blog post selfishly. But take a look at the difference. Take a look, see what differences you see. Hint, hint, some you don't see. And read all about that there.
Well, this is going to air on the 7th of February. So make sure you send me a link to the blog post, and I'll put that in the description so people can actually go and look at that. So
Perfect.
Sounds great. So what else can this thing do on the with the Delta cooking besides what we just talked about?
Okay, so let's just talk about logging of these things. So more about, and even if you don't have HACCP or anything like that, you just want to save information about your cooks. I find that home cooks are super inquisitive about sous vide cooking. I'm now in, a couple of the sous vide forums that, yourself, Jason's on, Kevin, some of the, really engaged folks in the sous vide community that we know. And they just want to know more. So here in the screen, and I don't know if you'll actually find an image of this on our website. I don't believe you will. But in the bottom right corner of the screen, there's a little clipboard because I have HACCP data logging turned on. And in settings, I've set myself up as a user. I set Dave Pietranczyk up as a user. So here, by clicking that clipboard, I start going into this HACCP feature. So first it says, enter the food name. And it's always fun entering this from like the side or the back side of this product. So here, okay, so we've got pork. And you can make that as detailed as you like, pork belly, pork shoulder, whatever. Enter a name, then enter the thickness. So we're going to say, I have it set up in millimeters because for me, I don't like fractions. I like single numbers. So 28 millimeters, thank you very much. We're going to hit next. Who's cooking it? Again, I'm set up here as a user, so I hit Dave. And then it says, are you ready to start the log? Start log. And now it's recording all of this temperature data, all of the information that I have here. And then within the PolyScience HACCP Manager app, I enter, Flavor Bound Kitchen at 123 Happy Street. My HACCP variance number, 427-2718. I enter who my supplier was, where I got, from Slagle Farms. I got my pork from Slagle Farms. So there's all of this HACCP is all about traceability and keeping a track of the flow of food and where things came from, who did it, and again, those temperatures. And then all of this is mashed up with that data and presented in a PDF.
So I understand you give them more data than they actually need, so it confuses them and they don't even look at it. Okay, I trust you. If you got all this data.
Actually, it's funny. When we created the log, it was reviewed by several health departments across different branches across the world. We had some people in UK look at it. We had some people in Australia look at it. Food Authority of New South Wales. A couple, we had a lot of people of varied backgrounds, everywhere from like health departments to chefs to a different number of colleges, and we made a log that pretty much is great for everyone. Anything that's on there is good across the world, because again, like when we do something, we do it right. So if you hand somebody this log for a temperature data log, they're going to be pretty happy with you.
Yeah, their eyes will cross and go, how much data do you actually have on here?
Yeah, and again, it all happens behind the scenes. Like you kind of set everything up in the Asset Manager once, all that stuff about your establishment. You set up your users once, and then really it's just when you go to do the cook about entering the information, those things that I just showed you, the name, the thickness, all of that stuff, who did it. And then it kind of pulls all these things together into one beautiful log. So it is really easy to do.
Well, David, I think our time's about out. I don't want to go. I could probably go another 3 hours and talk about all this stuff, but I know you got other things to do, and I don't want to bore everybody, because us food geeks can talk about these kinds of things all day long. But I want to thank you for coming on. I really look forward to seeing more from PolyScience on some of these innovative technology appliances that they're coming out with.
Yeah, I would actually, we should do sometime a show on the MX2 infuser. I'd love to do that. We can do, we'll do some cold brew coffee. We'll make a brine. We'll make some infused vinegars, stuff like that. And I can show you guys how the infusion and stuff like that works.
That's definitely something I'll think about for maybe next month or in 6 weeks or so, because believe it or not, I get a lot of inquiries on vacuum sealers. I was really surprised. Some of the videos I do on vacuum sealers get a lot more action than sous vide stuff, because they're getting cheaper. They're getting cheaper. People can use them for a lot more things now. And I think with all the stuff with the pandemic, people are, prepping food more. They're doing all kinds of things with these vacuum sealers. So they're becoming a lot more popular. And people are really, really wanting to know what they can do with them. So I'll definitely do that.
Yeah. When we were working on this, it's not just what is a vacuum sealer, but it's what can it be? Can we make it a cooking appliance? Well, yeah, I know I can make brines in it. I can infuse things in it, and I don't have to heat them. Like if I'm making a brine, I did. It was my father's birthday this past weekend, and I did a pork shoulder. A brine pork shoulder that I then braised in the oven, and I brined it first. You do not need any recipe that says you need to bring a brine to a boil and whatever. It's absolutely, you do not need to do that. There's so many other ways to infuse the flavor into that liquid without bringing it to temperature. And basically just what I did, I put in the restaurant, we call it a third pan, and placed it into the chamber with the brine, salt, sugar, bay leaves, chili flake, all of those things. Put it in there, run the infusion cycle on it. You take it out and you can see the colors even just visually change. Like from the thyme leaves that has like a little bit of a green tint, you can actually see the level of infusion that you've gotten. You can taste it, and it's cold. I can drop my pork shoulder right in. I know I don't have to cool it down. Throw it right in the fridge. There's so many things that you can do with vacuum sealers now that you couldn't do before.
Well, save that for that episode then. We'll go into a lot of that stuff, because I definitely want to do that. But I want to really thank you for going into what PolyScience has. These new circulators are phenomenal. I really look forward to getting my hands on one. And anything else you want to talk about? Anything else new that PolyScience is coming out with?
We're going to focus on the Hydro Pro Plus. We do have some stuff that's in the works. I do have a number of NPD projects that are on my desk, none of which that I'm at liberty to share. But I do have we do have a number of things in the works that are pretty cool. But yeah, right now the focus is Hydro Pro Plus. I mean, they just launched in November, and we celebrated 15 years with the Classic Series, 10 years with the Chef Series. So These are going to be around to stay for a while. The MX2, we have a bunch of content coming out on that because it came out, and the Hydro Pro Plus was right behind it, or Hydro Pro. So we have a ton of content coming out on that. And then we actually do have some stuff coming out for Control Freak that's pretty cool. So lots of stuff.
Cool. Well, make sure you guys check out the PolyScience.com, and we will definitely
PolyScience Culinary.
Yeah, PolyScienceCulinary.com. That's right. I lost it there. There it is. PolyScienceCulinary.com. And then you can check out all the things that we talked about. Thanks, Dave. And they also have a YouTube channel as well, PolyScience Culinary YouTube channel. And you'll see Dave on there because you do all those videos, correct?
I do a lot of them.
Well, thanks, Dave, for being on. I'll get with you, and we'll definitely, in a few weeks, we'll do one on the MX2 there.
Cool. Thank you, Darren.
Buddy. Thanks again. All right. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you again on the next Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Well, thanks again for joining us on the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I want to thank Chef David Pietranczyk of PolyScience for coming on. Make sure you check out PolyScienceCulinary.com to check out the products we were talking about. Make sure you check out the PolyScience Culinary YouTube channel, and make sure you join Fire and Water Cooking on Facebook, Instagram, and check out the Fire and Water Cooking YouTube channel as well. I'll see you again on the next Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Thanks, guys.